Hi everyone, thank you for being here. If you missed my last two videos, let me catch you up. In my first video, I told you about the shock phase, and I told you about the importance of meeting people where they are emotionally in their journey and working from that point forward and how that builds the trust. Last week, I shared with you the stabilization phase. And this is again something I call getting the work done phase. Now, I want to remind you of the story that I was sharing with you about the man who was caring for his mother at the end of life, and how in the shock phase, the initial time I met him, he was at the door with a syringe of medication in his hand shaking, and how I had to meet him where he was, build that trust so that we could get into a stabilization phase. And the stabilization phase is where all of the acute issues identified in the shock phase are addressed, leading to, again, the highest quality of daily living for both the patient and the loved ones. And it was in that stabilization phase, when things are stable, that meaningful conversations can be had. This is the last time we're going to be with that loved one. We have the goodbyes, we have the I love yous, we have the please forgive me and I forgive you conversations that really mean everything at this last very precious phase. And today I want to teach you about the third and final phase in the doula giver's end of life care model, the transition phase. Remember that I have developed this model of care based on the years of experience as a hospice and oncology nurse, and from, again, personally working with over 1,000 patients and their families at the bedside. It has been such an honor and a privilege, and it has taught me so very much. The transition phase. This may be the most stressful part of the entire journey due to the quick changes. And I often say that no matter how much we think we're ready to say goodbye to somebody we love, we're never 100% ready. So this is, again, where one of the doula giver pearls in the transition phase teaching is where I'll share with family caregivers that they might have to leave the bedside for a time period to allow their loved one to actually have their end of life. And why do I say that? There are three reasons why people hang on and will not have their end of life. One is they're waiting for people to come. Another is that they're waiting for an unresolved issue to be resolved. And the third is that they're waiting for you to leave the bedside. They do not want this to be the last moment you remember. They know that end of life is so hard. This is so hard what we're all going through, and they don't want to add to that. So they actually wait for that 5 minutes that you leave the room to have their end of life. Now, there's a much bigger picture here. When you are working in end of life space and people are in their sleeping coma, when they haven't been speaking, their eyes have been closed, they haven't been talking for days and or weeks, and they know the 5 minutes that somebody left the bedside, how do they know that? It is all the time orchestrated. And I think one of the biggest things we have to talk about is all of this information and education, because my families, not knowing about end of life, the first thing that they think of and feel is that the guilt that they weren't there, that they missed it. And they are, again, this guilt overwhelms them. This was exactly what was supposed to happen. So I do share the possibility of leaving the bedside. And I want to finish the story about this beautiful family that I had the privilege of working with. And at the very end, in that transition phase, I was there that afternoon, and we knew that this woman was going to have her end of life within the next 24 hours. And I shared with them about possibly leaving the bedside, different things that we could anticipate. And she was in her transition phase where she was labored breathing and her mouth was a bit hung open, and we were trying to get her in a comfortable position in her sleep state. And the next morning when I got there, they answered the door like this. Now, she had had her passing that night, and I got there the next day. They opened the door and they said, "You have to see her. We haven't touched her." Almost excited. So now you're talking about somebody who's just had an end of life with their mother. So they told me what happened that night. That night, the gentleman was sleeping on the floor of his mother's bedroom. He wanted to be with her, and he wanted to, assist her and not be missing her end of life. But he was sleeping on the floor. There wasn't any other place for him to be. And at about 2 o'clock in the morning, the wife said that she came downstairs and she said to him, "Do you remember what Suzanne said? Do you remember that she may not want to have her end of life passing in front of you? Please come up to bed." And he did. And they said at about 5:30, 6 o'clock, they came down and they found her looking absolutely beautiful with almost a smile on her face. And they were, of course, so upset that they had had this end of life experience, that they're saying goodbye to somebody they love, but they were so happy that it went like it did, and they had this to hold on to their hearts. And they brought me in to see her, and exactly that. She looked absolutely beautiful. She was sitting up in a beautiful position with almost a smile on her face, and it brought such peace and serenity to this whole experience. So remember, the Doula Givers training is full of pearls, and one of them is in the transition phase. It may be that your loved one is waiting for you to step away from the bed for them to have their end of life experience. Eventually, every one of us will be touched by end of life, and anyone can do this work. It is an absolute calling, and I will tell you that is the most meaningful and fulfilling work that I have ever done. If you have the calling to do this work, you can be a doula giver, end of life doula. Okay, so people say, can you really make a full-time living as an end of life doula? And the answer is yes. If you, again, do the Doula Giver Specialist and become a consultant, you do advanced directives, you help people with planning ahead, because a very positive end of life starts way back here when we think about what we would want or not want, and all of those things that have to be organized and in place for that positive end of life are already there. So yes, you can, because you're a consultant when people are healthy, and then you're the end of life doula in that space when people are at the end of life. Again, the success that my students have been seeing is absolutely incredible. The Doula Givers Institute graduates thousands of students every single year, and the momentum is growing and growing, and the ripple effect of the positive work they're doing out there is simply incredible. Registration is open now for the next Doula Givers Live online semester starting May 4th. Early registration discounts and bonuses will be available until Sunday, April 25th at 12 a.m. Eastern Time. For more information or to enroll right now, go to doulagivers.com or click the link below, and I'll see you in class.